So my name is Ashwanth. I work at PL on the outer core team. So work very closely with a lot of our Filecoin DeFi teams that launched in the beginning of FEM launch back in March, and have really worked with them to kind of go to market, help remove technical blockers. Hey, Lucas. And have worked very closely with Anshuman, who's also in the room here. So he will also be able to answer some questions. So I think everyone in this room is kind of familiar with how SPs grow. Three main ways: you can either buy hardware, you can onboard more data, or you can get faster like sealing capabilities. But ultimately, what's needed for all of these things is that you need Filecoin, the token, as pledge collateral. And so, as the ecosystem is quite big today. We have over 3,500 storage provider systems, 10.5 EB in capacity, and a bunch of data onboarded. And so we also have lots of people who hold the Filecoin token in the Filecoin ecosystem. So circulating supply today is around 500 million. We have estimated like 60% of that is in retail or exchange wallets. And the demand for Filecoin as a token from SPs is quite high, right? SPs looking to onboard capacity, SPs looking to onboard data, but there hasn't really been a great connection between the token holders and storage providers. I think back of the envelope math, SPs need about 6,000 fill in the token to onboard 1 PB of raw byte capacity, or 60,000 fill to onboard 10 QAP of quality adjusted power. So like 1 PB of fill plus data. So a lot of Filecoin is needed by storage providers today. And there's also a good amount of Filecoin that's out there that is available to kind of be utilized. So in the past, how could SPs grow the network? Well, they could purchase fill, which is high responsibility on the SPs to take price risk. On the token holder side, doesn't really matter. We've also seen SPs, especially in Asia, do a lot of direct leasing. So SPs working directly with token holders, kind of off-chain promises to say, hey, you give me this fill, I'll give you this interest rate, and we can do an off-chain deal. We've seen some CeFi lending, so things like Dharma and Anchorage and CoinList have been great ecosystem partners, kind of connecting both token holders and SPs right there in the middle. We've also seen some exchanges do some lending in the past. So those options have existed, but they don't really scale that well. We don't have a ton of information about those exchange programs anyways. But then now you kind of have DeFi leasing and staking. And so when I made this slide back in March, we weren't totally sure where this would fall on the spectrum of SP responsibility and token holder responsibilities. But I think it's safe to say that it has become a pretty convenient option for many different groups in the Filecoin ecosystem, and we'll get into that in a second. So FEM came aboard, we got Filecoin, DeFi leasing and staking. I always have to say this because this is a bit more of a sensitive topic, and obviously I'm not going to get into any of the specific providers that offer staking options today. We're just going to kind of talk about this at a high level. And then what I'd love to kind of pick your brains on is where this could kind of go in the future and how we can improve on the existing models today. So just to orient with kind of our main stakeholder groups in this process day, you have your token holders, you have your staking service, or sometimes it's referred to as a pool. Then you've got your onboarded SPs, these are just random SPs. And then you have the Filecoin protocol. So how does this all work? Well, token holders can deposit their fill into a staking service or pool. The staking or service or pool then takes that Filecoin and lends it, pledges it, or stakes it, leases it to the onboarded SPs to their platform. Now, this onboarding process looks very different across all of these different staking protocols. They all have different criteria. Some of them are only on-chain, some of them are only off-chain. Some of them take a combination of both and weight these different factors. So this is something that if you're an SP, there are like 10 different providers out there that are doing this all slightly differently, and you've got to find the one that works best for you in your operation. So once you loan out the Filecoin to these onboarded SPs, SPs can use this for pledge collateral to the Filecoin network, and then it starts coming back the other way after the deal duration is done. Pledge collateral comes back along with block rewards. SPs keep some of those block rewards. They put some of those block rewards back in the pool, and those block rewards that end up back in the pool can go back to the original token holder, or they could go back into, I can get rid of this, sorry. Or they can go back into like a treasury management system, risk reserves, something like that. So this model is a very, very generalized model. Kind of just simplified it down to be able to talk about all these different protocols that exist today. And again, what we are trying to do is come up with enough resources so that both token holders and SPs can make as informed decisions as possible when trying to select which service might work best for them. Again, this is a pretty tricky thing to do, but we're always open to suggestions, and we're learning about this process as well. A couple of things. Ison hit on some of these facts right at the beginning of these talks today, but the DeFi ecosystem on Filecoin has really started to grow pretty quickly over the last few weeks, actually. I think we hit the 6-month mark a couple weeks ago, and we hit 10 million in Filecoin deposits. So I just want to quickly walk through two terms that we use. So Filecoin net deposits, or total net deposits. So that's the amount of Filecoin that token holders have put into various different staking protocols that exist in Filecoin. And then total net borrows is the amount of Filecoin that SPs have borrowed from these different DeFi applications. And so as you can see, I think we crossed 13 million this morning in terms of total net deposits. And then in terms of borrows, we're surging past 10 million there. QR code there if you want to check out this page. And then additionally, there's another page down here which we've linked, which is a more qualitative view to kind of look at all the different staking options that exist today. And there's some good methodology on that page. I won't get into that today, but hopefully some good resources for you to explore on your own time. So what's next? And I think this is kind of where you were getting to with some of your questions about stablecoins, DEXs, all of these other things that actually form a robust DeFi ecosystem, right? Because right now what people are doing is they are depositing their Filecoin in these staking protocols. They're receiving voucher tokens, and they have absolutely nothing to do with those voucher tokens besides maybe just sitting on them and waiting. So I think the fact that we've hit 13 million in Filecoin deposits is actually a bit insane without any DEXs or stablecoins or major bridges that are launching. I think people are very excited about Filecoin on DeFi. DeFi on Filecoin. So what we've kind of pulled together here is a prioritization or some of the building blocks of what you need to have or build a robust DeFi ecosystem. And so we've started to engage with a lot of these different protocols and services about what it would take to implement on FVM. And these conversations have come a long way. I think we've made a lot of great headway in terms of the DEXs space and AMM space. I think some of the things like lend borrows and yield optimizers will come a bit after. Also stable coins, I think some of the larger ones they want to wait to see TVL. But that being said, this is kind of where I want to focus today, and we can turn this into a discussion, which is let's partition this slide into what exists today, what is kind of strong today, what's in progress, and then some of the features, implementations, and tools that we would like to see in the future. And I think this discussion can also be segmented into native Filecoin tooling versus utilizing forks or things that exist in other DeFi ecosystems. And the reason why I want to split that is because I think in other ecosystems, utilizing forks is a lot easier. But as we know, Filecoin is pretty unique. And so it's not as simple as just like lifting and leveraging something and utilizing it in the Filecoin ecosystem because it exists in Ethereum, right? I think there are a lot of different considerations and tweaks that you can make to something to really optimize it to work in Filecoin. So, of course, if you're watching this online and you're a builder and you're working on a fork or a native solution of some type, please get in touch. We'd love to learn about it. Recently learned about a small native DEX that's going to be launching. We're really excited about that, and we are hopeful to help out as much as we can. But yeah, so I know there were some questions about DEXs, stablecoins, all these sorts of things. Now would be a great time to ask any follow-up questions, and I'm going to volunteer Anshuman as well to help me answer some of these questions too.
How do you think about fungibility for the receipt token when you get into staking and leasing?
Very good question. Anshuman and I have thought about this a lot from the perspective of you want to avoid like an alphabet soup of liquid staking tokens, right? And we've also looked at other ecosystems and kind of how they've solved this problem. And I think the long and the short of it is it's kind of a waiting game, right? Right now we have these 13 teams that are kind of vying to see who will emerge at the top. And whether these 13 teams will exist in 1 year, 2 years down the line is to be seen. But until then, we see 13 different derivative tokens right now. And so right now they're not fungible at all because you can't really do anything with them. Or there's no DEX, right? You can't arbitrage any of them. You can't swap any of them out. So 2 parts to this answer then. I think one, hopefully when more infrastructure comes aboard, they will be more fungible. But also I think as time passes, I'm not necessarily sure that many tokens will kind of still be that prominent. Like Ethereum, I think, has started to consolidate quite a bit, right? Lido, I think, has reached 1/3 of all tokens.
I mean, the big difference between Ethereum, right, is you don't have the 18-month lockup requirements for SPs, which, of course, Ethereum had the beacon chain lock for a long period of time, but I think that's a tricky part if you want to enable liquidity, borrow lend on any of these secondary tokens, because you need a baseline level of liquidity to even do lending and do liquidations for these assets.
Right. And that's why I kind of mentioned I don't know if it totally makes sense to lift and leverage forks of different solutions, because I just don't I think that's one of the main reasons why that wouldn't work. I don't think that the Filecoin ecosystem has been tested to kind of see what would it be like if a rush of people tried to unstake their tokens before deal durations were up, right? I think right now many of the people who are staking are those who are just waiting to see how this will go for 6 months to a year and kind of testing out these solutions. But I think you're totally right. We'll have to see kind of what solutions emerge and are more prominent that work within the parameters of a Filecoin deal.
Thanks.
Anshuman, I don't know if you have thoughts there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a solution. The other thing when you ask about fungibility is also because ultimately you're lending to storage providers, every SP is different. And so your token is my receipt token, even if it's from the same protocol, might be different from another receipt token from the same protocol. For example, Glyph has this concept of Glyph pools, where a pool might be a different set of SPs with different risk characteristics. And so that's sort of it's a coin with 2 sides, right? One, you get sort of this fractured environment, but the other is that you have very fine granular control over your risk tolerance, right? Which you might not get, in other ecosystems. So I think with the coming of DEXs and basically venues to trade and do some market discovery of these things will solve some of the problem. Time will solve some of the other ones in terms of who's the longer lasting ones. But at this point, I think it's like what Ashwin said, it's a waiting game to see how this plays out.
I don't know if it's related, but maybe a little bit. Like the fact that 70% of tokens that are, what did you call it, deposited are 70% of deposited ones are actually lent out. That's a good thing, right? You don't want that to be 100 because. Can you just expand on that? Because I think that helps with also some of the risk stuff, right? You're adjusting for sudden withdrawals of liquidity and stuff, right? That's what that counts for.
Yeah, it's a great point. So, and I think Eisen touched on this a little bit in the beginning, but the total net borrows will never be equal to total net deposits, right? Because many protocols have risk reserves or ideal utilization rates, right? I think 80% of the total deposits in the pool is usually the maximum amount that can be utilized for lending out to storage providers.
How is it like in banks? Do you know? It's much lower, no? Like in real banks, because it's the same concept, no? Like you can only borrow. Yeah, fractionally. Yeah.
Yeah, they go the other way.
Yeah, and I think again that maybe that 80% number flexes up or down, but I think that is exactly right. These protocols are thinking about how to manage potential runs on protocols and things like that. They know that they're not invincible, and they've also seen other ecosystems how they have succeeded and failed in the past, and so they're learning a lot of lessons themselves. I think a very good example of how these protocols are adapting is many of them have dynamic interest rates in the sense that the interest rates adjust according to the Filecoin protocol based on the Filecoin protocol's minting model or minting mechanism, right? Which we know has been fluctuating over the last year. And so a lot of these protocols have implemented levers to modulate with those changes. I also think that we've seen protocols totally do away with that interest rate model and instead move towards a profit sharing model where 60% of block rewards stay with the SP and 40% go towards the token holder or protocol. And that, helps account for potential declines or increases in the total amount of block rewards that are minted by the Filecoin protocol in general. So again, another example of creativity from these DeFi protocols.
No? Okay.
I will say we have a couple of upcoming events next week. A few of these DeFi teams will be in Vegas. So again, if you're watching this online and you're going to be there, or if you're here in Iceland and you're going to be making the trip, a lot of these teams have office hours, so you can sign up and chat with them one-on-one. And then during Lab Week in Istanbul, we'll be doing another kind of DeFi event with a bunch of different Filecoin DeFi teams, and that'll be a great opportunity to meet them, whether you're a token holder or storage provider. So just wanted to plug those two events, and hopefully we'll see you there. Thank you all, and thanks, Matt.